Good morning. It is Alexa Hampton here. This is 52 Weeks of Design, and today we have a very special guest who we actually interviewed before. We interviewed her last Thursday, but I wasn't able to save it. So we just keep trying. We will not be denied. But it's somebody I think you would love to meet because I have been blown away by her. And it worked.
Hey,
Hey, Marilyn, how are you?
good. How are you doing?
Well, everybody who has joined us, this is Maryline Damour, a more romantic name there never was. And though spelled Maryline, it is pronounced in the French fashion, as French is your first language.
Yes, it is. Yep. And everybody, I did a short stint as an actress 100 years
Uh-huh.
ago, and everyone used to say, "Oh my God, what a great stage name."
I mean, really, it is amazing. But you've gone far from the stage. I'd love for you to walk us through your career because it's been very interesting, and a lot of things have happened to you, and then a lot of things you've just decided, hey, I'm just going to do this.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm an interior designer, and I've been an interior designer for 4 years. And prior to that, the only other job I've ever had is marketing, public relations, communications for consulting firms. So I
At
spent
major
most of my
firms.
at major firms. So I spent most of my life working at these big global consulting firms. So we had projects with companies like American Express or the World Bank, kind of those other big global companies. And so part of my job was to help with strategic communications and marketing planning and strategy. And so I did that until I bought a weekend house up here in the Hudson Valley when I was still living in the city. I'm originally from New York City. And that house kind of was my first time really having an opportunity to do something other than paint walls because I'd only ever had a rental before that.
Sure.
And yeah, so I had that house for about 4 or 5 years, and in the middle of that was when I decided that maybe interior design was something that I could possibly do, and then I wound up going back to school. So yeah,
And you went to Parsons.
and I went to Parsons. Yep. So I
Yeah.
still had my day job, and I went to Parsons. So I was kind of doing double duty for a few years, which was kind of insane.
Um, so as we were talking about the other day, you do approach things in addition to, a normal approach. You also are very academically driven when you approach things.
I guess I am. I've always been one of those kids that really liked school, and I've always been a big reader and writer. And I think consulting actually appealed to me because if you think about what consultants do, we tend to have a specialty. So my specialty was marketing and PR, but you
Mhm.
don't really have an understanding of all these different industries that you're thrown into. So a fair amount of that is sort of like jumping in, doing your research, really understanding the lay of the land. And so and I love that because to me, that was, that career was a lot of it was kind of like being in business school.
Yeah, it sounds like you're getting your PhD and then
Yeah.
just decided to apply it to something else.
Yeah.
Um, and you've got to, I sort of, I'm thrilled that I've always been a decorator, but there is something about people for whom it is a second career, that that they heard the calling, that they could not deny it anymore, that they
Yeah.
just had to succumb,
Yeah.
which
I'll
is,
tell you something. Yeah. I'll tell you something funny. So I look back at it now and I think about, oh, when did I really, you know, get an interest in interior design? I mean, I always had design magazines around, and, people watch HGTV. And I remember there was a point when I would be hanging out with friends in restaurants and bars, and I would be, just doodling on my napkin and basically kind of reimagining the floor plan. And it was just this random thing. I don't know why I started doing it.
did you give
I
it
don't
to
know
the
why I
maître
started
as you
doing it.
left, like, here,
Yeah,
kid, this
it
will
was just
help?
the weirdest thing. And then, when I got to school, I actually learned how to do a floor plan. And I was like, look at that. This is what I was doing this whole time. I just didn't even know it. So, yeah.
Yeah, you heeded the call. That's
Yeah.
just bizarre. Um, so okay, so then, by the way, were your parents at all involved? Not involved, but were they interested in design? What did your house look like growing up?
So my mom is just the classic person who's afraid of color. My entire growing up, even now, she's just been a beige tone on tone person. And the furthest she's ventured, because she lives in Haiti, that's where I'm
Uh-huh,
from.
uh-huh.
And bright colors get so washed out under like the bright Caribbean sun,
Sure.
so beige doesn't really work as well as it could.
Yeah.
So her only concession now is she'll do like a slight like hint of pink, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's her concession to being in the
Like
Caribbean. Yeah.
shell reflection.
Exactly, exactly. So yeah, so I did not grow up with that at all. Yeah.
It's funny to think of her as being fearful of anything design wise, because when I look at your work, I see I see echoes of fondness for industrialism and a bit of whimsy,
Hmm.
a playfulness and um, not as though it's not serious. It's very serious, but there's just some humor, some light-hearted play at work at the same time.
Yeah, I think, my love and joy in interior design, it's the thing that people say I could do it all day long,
Yeah.
morning, noon, and night and not even get paid. But of course, it's nice to get paid. But I think that just sort of joy of doing it kind of comes out in my work quite a bit. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're in New York, you switch careers, or no, you haven't switched careers yet. And
No,
you
right.
go to Kingston, New York. And why were you there? Were you just driving around? What brought you to that part of the world?
So the vacation home that I had purchased before I went back to school, which kind of prompted me to go back to school,
Mhm.
was actually in Kingston, which was like 10 years ago. And it's so weird that 10 years later, after, I've gone through school, I was a working interior designer in the city for about a year. I had a couple of projects while I was still in school. And it's just so
That's
weird that it's
major.
full circle and I'm back in Kingston. It was just a place that, unlike anything else I had seen in a really, really long time, maybe Brooklyn in the very, very early days when all the creatives
Mhm.
were kind of moving in and starting their own businesses, just the level of creativity up here and entrepreneurial spirit, like it's just amazing what people are doing up here. And that kind of just always stuck in the back of my head. And then at some point I decided I really wanted to open my own business. And Kingston felt like, a place where I could really,
Yeah.
find my tribe kind of thing,
Yeah,
if you will.
totally. Totally.
Yeah.
I also, when we were talking before, you said you got there, but you knew your tribe was there, but you weren't stumbling upon them.
Yeah.
Um, and so you just kind of said, I'm going to bring us together. And
Yeah.
oh
Yeah.
well, no, even before that, actually, the thing that most impresses me, because connectivity is huge, but the fact that you went and bought into a construction company, I think is one of the smartest, bravest moves, because that is seriously scary, and it doesn't necessarily, it sounds great. It sounds like it would work, but there's absolutely no
Yeah.
guarantee that it would be a feeder for your business, or, like sometimes you work with people too long and then you hate them. you know? But that has not been
Yeah.
your experience.
Yeah. No, that's true. It seems like it should be a natural match. If you're an interior designer, obviously you're always working with construction workers and contractors. So why not pull that in house? I mean, it is a very, very challenging thing. Um, you know, that closeness that develops when you have a 50% partner and you guys, you're not in the same business, but you're on the same spectrum of business, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's been really interesting. I've learned a lot about construction, which has made me such a better designer.
I
I have a
I
much
totally
better
get that.
sense of space. My construction partner is a builder of houses. So he builds houses from the ground up, and he's been doing it for about 15, 20 years. So he has a real design sense,
Yeah.
which wasn't something that was there, but after doing it over the years. So that connection has been really great to kind of learn his business, him learning my business. That's been really cool.
And was your consulting background terribly useful in setting that up as a business model?
Absolutely. I mean, everything that I've ever really done, like if I had thought that interior design would be at all related to consulting, I wouldn't have, I couldn't even imagine that until I was in the doing of it. And in the doing of it, consulting is literally all about, here's a problem, how do you fix it? How do you make this business more efficient? How do you make it more profitable, et cetera? And so going into it, I went to Fred Drake
Your
is now my
bag of
construction
tricks.
partner. Yeah, so I went to him and basically laid out a whole value proposition, right? Of, what it would mean to have a design build firm, especially in this market when there aren't a whole lot of them, in the city where you're seeing architecture and design firms, and there's a reason why they do that, because when it works, it really works and it adds a lot of value. So so I basically, did the whole spiel and I just sold him into it and then crafted a strategy, for us to continue to kind of grow as a business. Yeah.
And you had worked with him on how many jobs prior to that?
One. We had worked on one, but it was a really big project.
You got married after one day.
I know, right? Yeah. I had originally hired him.
No, you got married.
I know. Yeah, we are like tied at the hip for sure. So I had hired him when I was in school. When I was finishing up school, I had 2 design projects that came up.
Again,
and one of them,
an extraordinary feat. How did that come about?
Not through me, because I already had a day job and I was going to school. I wasn't looking to do anything, other than, tread water and try and get through everything, But the one project where I pulled Fred Drake in, who's now my construction partner, was a loft build out. And it was an apartment building that I lived in. And this was someone who owned the apartment above me, and he'd been to my apartment. And he knew I was in school. And he, one day came and said, hey, I love what you've done with your space. Can you help me do my loft? Yeah. And what I mean by loft build out is, you have the 4 walls, you have the plumbing, all that stuff. But, you just have a big open space and you have to carve out a bedroom, carve out closets, all that good stuff. So having known Fred when I had the weekend house upstate, I hired him to come to Brooklyn, and he worked with me. And after that, I started thinking, okay, what would it look like if I had someone as part of our team that not only comes with competency, in construction and has the history of dealing with clients, all the stuff that I didn't know how to do, because he's helped me figure that out, being in a different service industry, but also somebody who actually understood design because he's been doing it long enough. Right. So we can speak that language. So it kind of worked out. Yeah.
Somebody earlier mentioned that you're a bionic in every way, and I sort of have to agree. I was talking to my husband about you, saying, when you talk to people in this template, you become very aware of how you speak yourself and how others speak. And I am a huge and and I use all of this horrible filler Valley Girl speak, and you use none. And I was saying to him, so interesting. Perhaps it's also having the command of 2 languages, your scholarly approach to things, but or the consulting. I don't know if you had what kind of presentations you had to give, but I think that being my Valley Girl speak notwithstanding, being able to speak to what you're thinking about in design is a critically undervalued skill, because if you cannot describe what it is you are aiming for, it's hard to get buy-in.
No, absolutely. I love that you kind of caught that. And that
it's pretty obvious.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you, where all the ums and ahs come in is in my language, right? So English is so I speak French and I speak Haitian Creole because I'm from Haiti. And a lot of people think that Haitian Creole, because a lot of Creole is sort of a watered down version of the official language. Haitian Creole is a completely different language, different vocabulary, different grammar, etc. So since those are my languages, that's where you see all of that. Learning English, and I also speak Spanish. When you learn a language, you learn.
Of course you do.
Well,
of course you do.
Once you do one, it's the oddest thing. Once you speak one language, it just gets progressively easier and faster. I don't know why that is, but I definitely experienced that. But what happens is, when you speak a language that's not your own, not only do you learn no accent, right? It's like almost accentless,
Sure.
but you learn textbook grammatically correct with a lot of fairly big vocabulary words that people
Yeah.
don't tend to use on a regular basis, because you're learning out of a textbook. So yeah, it's really
I
funny.
I love that you say that because a colleague of mine, we were at a project with this very glamorous old Italian man and very old school. And he would say to us, I want to feel the exuberance. And, he was just speaking in a non-ordinary way of speaking. And when we
Yeah.
left the meeting, my colleague turned to me and she said, God, I wish I spoke English like a foreigner. So it's very much your point. But
Yeah, yeah.
I'm sure that played a huge role in convincing Mr. Drake, or then going to, I forgot his first name, that's why I gave him an honorific,
Fred.
Frank, or your clients. And certainly those first jobs while you were in school. What was the second job that you had in school besides for your loft?
So right before I finished up Parsons, there was a professor who was at Parsons who had left, and he came back to do a presentation that I attended. And he's an architect. And after the earthquake in Haiti, he went back and started a practice in Haiti. And so part of the reason why I had the courage to even go to Parsons was the love of interior design, but also once the earthquake happened,
Yes.
I had a lot of family members and friends who were doctors and nurses, and people were going back to try to help. And I realized that I had no skill sets whatsoever that would, be helpful, right? Because what am I going to do with marketing and PR and communications maybe, but still, right? In those days, people needed houses, people needed
Right.
shelter.
Sure.
And so I thought, you know what, let me stay in touch with this guy, because who knows? And so for about a year, I sort of just check it and say, hey, this is the course that I'm taking now. I just did this loft project. Here are some photos, etc. And then he wound up getting this unbelievable project, restoring an 18th century cathedral in Haiti. And I got an email from him out of nowhere randomly a year later saying basically, hey, we have this project.
You
We need
into restoration?
yeah, a full interior restoration because, all the stained glass, all the furniture, everything was broken. It was just a pile of rubble when you walked into this church. And he said, is this something you can do? Do you have an experience doing stuff like this? And I said, absolutely, of course I can do that. And then I went on a research spree.
If I've done one cathedral, if I never do another cathedral, but I'll make room for you.
I know, right? I mean, I'm sure it's probably, can you imagine ever getting that phone call again? I could not have said no. There was no way. Yeah.
And I would also imagine there'd be a lot of self-imposed internal pressure on you while doing it. This is your hometown. This is a place of worship. This is a post-catastrophe where, only love should be poured in. You must have been on tenterhooks.
Kind of the scariest thing for me, I think, about that whole experience was my family, my parents, because they have a frame of reference for law and business and things like that. But interior design, I cannot explain it to their satisfaction, where they're like, I don't understand. You get paid to do what? Just buy stuff? I don't get what you do.
Yeah. I think you described a lot of people's parents just right in that one moment.
But yeah, so, that project, they were able to actually see what it was, right? They saw the design piece, they saw the decoration piece, they saw kind of the evolution. And so that to me was the scary part was, I'd been telling them, oh, this is my passion, this is my joy. I'm going to leave my 10-career, 6-figure salary, et cetera behind,
that
and
you
then
sent me to school for and educate me so well.
Exactly. So yeah, so I was very, kind of nervous going into it, thinking, I hope they, don't look at this and say, oh, that's what she's doing. Okay.
And when did that finish? Did that finish after you had graduated?
Yeah, so
I would assume that was a long gig.
Oh my God, yeah. It was a couple of years. So we started, so the earthquake was 2010. I think that project started in 2012 and we finished up like the year later. Yeah. So I was
pretty quick
by the time it was done. Yeah. There were so much got destroyed in the earthquake. There was such a massive push immediately after to really focus on those places that provide shelter, but also a community building,
Of course.
which, churches, in Haiti and the Caribbean, tend to be big places where
Sure.
communities gather. So yeah.
Which was the most beautiful segue. Let me thank you for pulling that out. So creating community, being a part of a community. You go to Kingston, you know Kingston, you love it. You find it to be this creative primordial soup, but you do not have a vessel through which to connect. Through which, by which, I don't know. You get the idea. You probably speak English better than I. So after creating this company with your partner, you decide to then create the Kingston Design Connection. Is it that came first, or did the show house come first?
So the business came first, and Kingston Design Connection and the show house sort of came together
At the same time?
At the same time, because, and that kind of goes back to my kind of consulting thing, once I realized that there were a ton of creatives up here, but we were so geographically dispersed that people, who had lived up here for 10 plus years, who were major designers and makers, did not know each other and kind of worked in isolation, worked in various pockets. And I was amazed by that, because I just assumed, right, that was, that would be a connected, collaborative, the whole situation was happening,
kind of a kumbaya aspect.
Yeah, exactly. So I was very surprised, walking into that and not seeing, those connecting points and not being able to meet, other designers and makers. Mm-hmm. And so it started out as something that I wanted to kind of address for myself. And then when I wound up, going out there and really talking to people and going to design events and hunting down these makers and designers, and I kept hearing from everybody, oh yeah, this is, there is no community. We don't really work together. We hear there's a ton of amazing people coming, but we don't know who they are. And we don't know where to find them.
Yeah.
So then I thought, okay, so, I kind of took stock of that, did some research, and decided that a show house is a perfect vehicle that's tried and tested, where you can bring a bunch of people together. They're kind of like a captive audience, right? They're working together on something for weeks at a time. And so you naturally develop those business relationships and those artistic relationships. So the idea of the show house happened. And then like literally 20 seconds later, the idea of creating a program happened. Because if I was really going to try to bring these people together, doing a show house once a year for 3 weeks with 100 participants would not even begin to make a dent, right?
Yeah.
And so Kingston Design Connection became a program under which the show house is kind of the most visible, kind of big marquee thing. But then we do a bunch of other, things throughout the year to, continue to connect people.
So how many people are within the community of the Kingston Design Connection?
So we're not a membership organization. It's really
like how many points of intersection? If you're saying 100 people in a show house, didn't you say the second year there were 100?
Yeah.
People?
So the first year we had 10 designers, about 50 makers. So, everyone from lighting designers, furniture designers, ceramicists, and then about 50 local businesses, because that was the third missing piece of the puzzle, is that not only designers and makers could we be working together and collaborating on projects, but we could also be supporting the local vendors in our community instead of going to the city. So, and that was a point that I noticed.
Win.
Right, exactly. So the first year we had about 100 between those three groups. The second year, last year, we had about 190 participants. And then if you take into account sort of the other design events we've done throughout the year, we've probably connected and touched, I don't know, maybe 500 people at this point. But the great thing, though, that's really cool is that it isn't just kind of connecting at those events. So, I have stories of designers and artists who have collaborated since then. Who are putting together, contractors who are working on projects, makers who are now being pulled into design build projects, whereas before they were just artists, right? They weren't, doing work as part of a client design project. So that's been really great.
That's interesting. Even your linguistic change from they were artists, now they're makers. And well, no, it makes perfect sense because um, in the absence of connection or patronage or an audience, you are just practicing your art. But the minute you can, live by it, you're making something, and that's very, very powerful.
Yeah.
It's just so impressive, and the fact that you're doing all of this and none of it is even your day job. Like,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you work. Tell me where
Yeah.
you work.
Yeah.
Where are all the
So
places
yeah,
you work?
so I am a working interior designer. This show house was meant to be a 1 year showcase. And then because people responded to it so well, not just in the community, but kind of generally, in the press and elsewhere, it became an annual thing. So I'm kind of trying to figure out how to weave it into my day life.
Yeah.
But generally, my work is either working as part of a design team as we build houses. We build a lot of houses from scratch, a lot of renovation work. So then I would come in, pick finishes and things like that. And then kind of the more pure decorating design jobs.
Yeah.
So I do,
So you're a very busy lady.
Yeah, I am. But it's good though. It keeps me out of trouble.
Yeah, no, and you seem happy about it. So
Yeah.
do you work mostly in Kingston and in the city, or do you work everywhere? Well, we know, and
Um,
Haiti.
yes. So I try to keep a hand in Haiti, since I'm not physically there. If I don't go 3 or 4 times a year, people will just forget, to
Yeah.
even ask me to work on stuff, right? So I try to do that. Most of my work in the past, since I've been up here, has been Hudson Valley based.
Mm-hmm.
The interesting thing is more New York City folks have been moving up here. And so
Yeah.
now so now I'm starting to get those phone calls in the city because people tend to have weekend homes up here,
Right.
while some, although a lot
And
of them
they,
are making
yeah,
permanent
they
move now.
might, yeah, it might be permanent now. It's
Yeah, yeah,
crazy.
yeah.
You're gonna have your hands full. Um,
I hope so. Yeah.
I like what you just said about, if I don't show up in Haiti 4 times a year, they'll forget about me. I'm thinking in terms of manifesting a dream, maybe I should just go to Paris 4 times a year so they know I'm around.
Yes.
Like,
Oh my gosh. Absolutely. Absolutely. I am that proponent. So, I've had the same career all my life, but because I was senior enough, I was lucky enough that I was able to take a couple of sabbaticals. So I spent a year, for example, as a fashion stylist, because I was always interested in kind of other visual
yeah,
creative fields, right? And what I literally did, and Alexa, you'll appreciate this because I think only in New York City can you probably pull this off. But I basically went to Staples, you know, printed out a lovely business card that said fashion stylist on it. And every party, everything I would go to, I would say, hey, I'm a fashion stylist, and give me a call until like 6 months or however long it took. I got a phone call one day from somebody whose assistant, had gotten sick or whatever. And then that's kind of how I wound up, just kind of like, yeah, just put it out there. Yeah.
I also
Fake it
love
till
that,
you make
like,
it.
you obviously don't understand what a sabbatical is for. It's like, it's for cheese. It's for wine and cheese. But I maybe the translation just didn't come
Yeah.
off right. But that is amazing. And then on top of all of this, I know I'm fangirling out, but on top of this, you say you're a loner. You describe yourself as a loner on the questionnaire, but look at you, like giving people your card, you're creating communities, connectivity, you're, making sure you're in Haiti enough times to keep your practice there. I mean, this is, are you pushing against the grain? Or is it
Um,
just you're so devoted to what you're doing that you're willing to sacrifice your default settings to get what you want professionally?
well, I think it's a little bit of both, well, the first thing is nobody ever believes me when I say that I'm a shy person.
I
And it's
certainly don't.
because, yeah, exactly. Nobody believes it. But you know who believes it? The people who believe it are the people in my family who, because if you knew me since I was young,
Yeah.
I have always been the person, the girl at the party who's in a corner with a book, whose parents are like, go play, go do something.
Little do
But
they know it was a book of business cards.
exactly, right?
Handing them out.
Oh boy. So yeah, so I come from a really, really large family. I have 300 plus cousins, massively insanely large family.
How many
And
brothers and sisters?
Zero, which is where that piece comes in, I think.
Got it. Totally.
Yeah, yeah. And so I'm a complete introvert. Somebody said extroverted introvert.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I am an introvert, but because I grew up in this family where the minute you're quiet, people are like, "Oh my God, are you okay? Something wrong? What can I get you?" And that kind of pushed me to make them feel more comfortable, right? So I would just put it on. And I got really good at doing that. And yeah, but I mean, on my own, like I literally am that person who I've like, turned off the lights when I see somebody coming, hearing somebody coming in the driveway. And I am that person. I really am. It's so bad. So bad.
So
Yeah.
what you're saying is you're really hating this conversation, but you'll do it.
What?
Now I know why the Wi-Fi wasn't working.
It's all about meeting you, Alexa. Are you kidding me?
Oh my God. So, I can ask anybody else, like, what's next? What are they doing? You already have so many balls in the air, but what is next? Like, do you have any fantasies of things that you haven't done yet?
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Like, do you want to do more product? Do you want to, what different disciplines within our design world?
One of the things that I've been realizing as kind of a new creative person, of 4 years, is that a lot of those things translate. Like the medium is just the medium. It can be anything. So one of the things that's happened with the pandemic is we've been getting a lot of phone calls to design and build vegetable gardens for people. Uh-huh. And, coming out of Parsons in the city, yeah, I never did landscape design before. And my thing was, okay, let's think about it, right? There's a long tradition of thinking about gardens as indoor spaces with walls and floors and, and sort of doing that. And then, so that's kind of one piece of it. I'd love to kind of explore other disciplines. Not that I want to go back to school, but things that where my interior design skills could translate nicely. I would love to do product design. I've, by mistake, created patterns of things that are making me think about fabric or wallpaper. Yeah. I mean, like all that stuff is just always jumbling in my head for sure.
And you have the community where certainly there must be somebody there who could be like, oh yeah, I've got a mill where I'm printing and all these serendipitous occurrences. Sure. So yeah, when you told me about the landscaping before, I tried to put it on the record, but our thing didn't record. So I would just like to reiterate that I asked you if you had a green thumb, and you're like, oh no, I'm not a landscape architect. And you're like, but I've built a bunch of gardens for people. So I bet you $100 on the record that in the next 2 years, that's going to be, you're clearly going to be a landscape architect in addition to all of your other things.
I mean, I buy a lot of gardening books because, like I said, I love to read. I love to learn stuff. And I'm one of those weird people who even like, I love to cook, for example, and I'm a big cook. I would go to culinary school just for the experience and never be a chef. Like, to me, that's just like the space where I want to be in, just like learning and absorbing all this new stuff.
Was that during a sabbatical?
Well, I actually had a catering company for a couple of years in the city. So I have worked as a chef. Yeah, I know, it's insane. I know. I'm a Gemini.
Just don't like free time. No wonder you're turning the lights out when you see people coming. You're like, what new business am I going to have to learn? What new trade? How long did you have a catering company?
I did. I had a catering company for 2 years in New York City, totally by happenstance. I think I was at PwC, another consulting firm at the time. Sure. And
sorry about that.
Hi. Yeah, and I love to cook. I have a natural affinity for cooking. It's just one of those things that I can do. Yeah. And and so I have a lot of dinner parties. I love to entertain, my friends, all that good stuff. And so a friend asked me once to help her with the dinner party she was having. Uh-huh. So I went early and helped her out. And then she had invited someone who I didn't know, who then actually hired me. And then he passed my name around. And it was funny because we got into this little niche where we were doing, we only did dinner parties. That was our thing. I decided if I was going to do it, I was going to do it in a very fun way because I didn't want to be a caterer kind of in real life forever. Yeah, right?
You didn't want your profession to be hijacked by accident.
Right. Exactly. So what I decided was that, in New York City, what people don't get to do is have dinner parties at home, which is such an amazing thing because people don't have apartments that are big enough. They don't have kitchens big
Yeah.
enough. And so we always wind up like at a big table in a restaurant, which is not at all the same thing. And so I wanted to give, New Yorkers that experience. And it wound up that we got this very niche market of lawyers who were forever wanting dinner parties to either celebrate like new associates or like at the end of like an internship every summer. So it became this little recurring thing where we had these dinner parties at these various, like partners' homes.
Yeah.
It was really cool. It was fun. Yeah.
I vote, and anybody on this, I want a yay or a nay. I would love it if you in Kingston did a beautiful bed and breakfast and you invited a bunch of us designers to come in and design a room using local manufacturers, and the community can keep it up. And like just a bunch of rooms all done by different people in our industry. You say, Alexa, you've got to use this upholsterer or this, maker. And we have like a little design utopia in Kingston, and then you could make money from it and you could have dinner parties there.
I've never heard of anybody doing that, which is always what gets me the most excited. Oh my God. I love that
like
idea.
You've got all the equipment over there.
Well, we certainly have
will
all the people to do it.
We already have somebody to supply textiles.
Yes, yes. Oh my, I mean, you wouldn't have to go too far afield to get all that amazing stuff for sure.
And you can incubate those patterns that you've been dreaming about, wallpaper some of the rooms and.
Wait a minute. Are you a Gemini? I think you're a Gemini too.
I am not a Gemini. I am a double Taurus, which is why I like sitting a lot. Like I am barely ambulatory, as I like to say.
That's intense.
Yeah. That's a bummer. But I'm married to a Gemini, and my father was a Gemini. I love Gemini.
Really? I did not know that about your father. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's great. Well, you know what? What I could use from the Taurus side is that stick-to-itiveness. Because as a Gemini, I will have 5 million ideas, and it's like the butterfly, right? And I'm flitting around, and then trying to like hone in and focus is my really hard thing.
I was reading, I have so much content coming at me these days. I don't know if I hear things in a conversation or I watch it on TV or if I read it in an article. So I apologize. I have no idea where this came into my head, but it was within the last week that somebody said it was a revolutionary thing for them when their mentor or employer told them, lean into what, I know that's such a hackneyed, now overused phrase, but lean into what you're good at. Like, don't try so hard to be good at what you're not good at. Like, just amplify what you're good at. Yeah. So, why you should just have people following you with pencils.
Yeah,
you don't need to have the follow-up. You need to get somebody to do your follow-up for you.
Yep. No, for sure. One of the things about me and my construction partner, and that's been the biggest sort of thing in terms of our communication challenges, is that I am very much, when I have a problem, when I want to accomplish something, I think about who are the best skill sets out there to pull into this, right? Because I want to make this the best that it can be, and I cannot do everything. He comes from a very different space where, because he's had his own business for so long, he's been in that world where he has done a lot of things by himself. And so it's been really challenging just sort of trying to kind of merge both those kind of styles together. Yeah.
And it's like we're not grown up to be taught not to do things we don't like. We're supposed to overcome it and learn it and become an expert. But I love the notion that you don't have to.
Absolutely.
You have to be mindful. You can't just let it go, never look at it. But like, why wouldn't we get the qualified, stick to it people to, if one's great at brainstorming, you need the great person to affect it.
Right. And in fact, if you look around the world, those are the people who get celebrated. Those are the people who get recognized. It's the people with the deep, specialty and not the generalist, Yeah, it's interesting to kind of not be taught that.
I heard Jonathan Adler speaking once, and he said that his greatest talent was delegation. And of course, he's just being funny. But I thought there was a nugget of truth to it that I took away with me and thought, that's smart.
Oh, there's a lot of truth to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the entire consulting industry would not exist. You know, like we work in teams of 30 because it takes that many connected people to
Yeah.
like affect massive change. I mean, you know, people always say that those people who affect the most interesting change are those who have a personal point of view, right? There's a
Uh-huh.
reason personally why they wanted to do it. And then they then take that out into the world. But by the way, they have to engage all those people to get it done because none
Mhm.
of it's going to happen otherwise. So yeah.
And obviously this you could take everything out of your mouth right now and put it into our political landscape right now. You know, like
Oh,
no change will
yeah.
be made
Yeah.
if there aren't people with skin in the game who really want things to change and who go out there and, vote and all of the
Yeah.
things that I know. I don't want to veer into a mire of politics, but it's
Yeah.
easy
Well, you
to.
know, that's what effectiveness looks like, right?
That's what it
Effectiveness looks
looks
like
like.
a bunch of different perspectives coming together to focus on an issue. You know,
Yeah,
that's what it is.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's what it is. Well, if this doesn't record, I'm going to drown myself.
Oh my God.
I'm
You and I
going
can have
to
a
kill
weekly
myself in the
standing chit
pool.
chat.
I feel such confidence this is going to work this time, and I couldn't be more honored to talk to you. And I'm sorry that the show house is not open now, but it might be open if by another means in October, right?
Yes, we are actually looking, we are moving forward with the show house. We are looking at doing virtual tours
Uh-huh.
of the show house for those people who are not comfortable coming through. You know, we're very lucky that where we are in Ulster County, where Kingston is, we've had we've had, first of all, very low
Knock on wood when
numbers
you say
of
these
cases.
things.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Knock on wood. And we've been very good about keeping the numbers low. So we're entering phase 4, I think. So, we're going to do everything we can to have kind of controlled tours at the house. And we're looking at different ways to kind of do that, whether it's like a, time period RSVP.
Yeah,
But yeah, we definitely want to do something this
yeah.
year again.
I have another idea. Party bus,
Yes.
party buses. Get people in
Ooh.
from New York who haven't experienced the Kingston Design Showhouse. I mean, who doesn't love a party bus?
You know what I love about that? We did a party bus, but we were thinking specifically for media. So last year we did a party bus where
But
we
your
picked up
makers need to
creators.
meet
You're
us,
right.
us other
Yeah.
decorators.
Yes.
So
Yes.
yeah,
I love that.
include us. May I come?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Please
Absolutely. You
invite
can
me.
come. Yes. That's a great idea.
Uh,
Okay. I will be calling you.
all right, wonderful. I can't wait. Now that I speak to you all the time,
I know
successfully or
exactly,
not,
right?
this is awesome. All right, thank you so much, Marilyn. You are an incredible inspiration.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank all of you guys for coming back on or joining us. That's
Yeah,
great.
fingers crossed.
Yep,
All right,
exactly.
kisses.
Okay. Speak
Bye.
soon.
Speak
Ciao.
soon.